Hey everybody, welcome to episode 71. I had some time to get another episode whipped up before the weekend, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. This will be my Monday episode. So, like I said, I got those Ghost albums coming, or that Ghost album coming. It's supposed to be here Sunday, and so is the t-shirt, so I figured I would wait until probably Monday. I'll get a chance and I can, put some time into it over the weekend, listen to the album a few times. So I kind of figured I'd do a spontaneous spur-of-the-moment thing, just to get another video knocked out, just so I'm a little ahead of myself. Like I said, I don't really like going in to doing a video the day of it needs to be posted. I like to have at least one in the bank. So I was trying to think of something that I haven't talked about in a while, and something that I might have glossed over. And one thing I think I did gloss over, and we're going to talk about He-Man, the Masters of the Universe in this episode. And the thing I glossed over, I think, and something very important to it. I covered, my shtick on the Filmations cartoon. I covered, I'm pretty sure I covered most of the toys. I mean, here and there. Maybe I didn't do a deep dive into the actual action figures. I think the best thing for that, if you want to, just watch the Toys Who Made Us on Netflix. That's probably the most comprehensive on the toys. And outside of my own personal experiences, which I do have, and I think I kind of hinted on some of those, I don't think I can really do it any better than they did. There's a couple other people I see online that have done stuff as well. People that actually work for, like, the Dark Horse. There's Pixel Dan. There's plenty of people who talk about the Masters of the Universe figures. I mean, I guess I could talk about my specific experiences. I don't know if maybe that's something you want to. I mean, that would pretty much be the whole shot. Would just be my, a timeline and kind of a play-by-play from when I initially learned about it to, like, when I said. I think I've covered most of that in bits and pieces in other Masters of the Universe videos. So, for this one, but this is one thing that was pretty important to me, and I don't think I gave it enough time into it, and it definitely didn't cover this book specifically. But speaking of the Dark Horse books, I'm going to talk about the mini-comics. Specifically, obviously, the mini-comics that pertain to the ones that I had, which is the 82 through 84 line. I just makes my passing comments on the ones after that. Basically, even, like I said, I was kind of out of Masters of the Universe by, like, early 85 or 84, whenever it was. Before the fourth wave started, looking back, because I never had, many of the toys after that, and I never had any of the She-Ra stuff. And all of that's in here. I mean, every mini-comic up to the Origins is in this book. They're all reproduced nice. I think they're to size. No, I think they're bigger than size. Because this book is about, look at how thick this puppy is. And it also, I'm going to lose my spot here, because I don't think I was in any important spot, but it also gives you one of those nice ribbons, bookmarks, which I think most of the Dark Horse books do. Can't remember if the action figure one does. But it's a great book. This was also gifted to me by my gifter friend who gifted that. He gifted me this a while ago. I think I want to say he gave me this like in 2014 maybe. I don't know when it was published actually. Let's see here. It was published where's the copyright? 2015. So yeah, maybe it was 2000. Maybe it was brand new when he gifted me this. I think it was a birthday present, I believe. Could have been Christmas, but yeah, I thought I was thinking 2014, but no, it was probably 2015. It could even have been 2016, but I think it was 15. That he gifted me this, and he said, "Oh, I saw something you probably would definitely dig." Because I know about you and your love of Masters of the Universe, and so, I've kept it since then. It's one of my cherished items. Even though half the book are comics that I didn't really have or weren't really concerned about. But obviously, I've got a CBR of this. Trust me, so I can switch to the screen. We'll look at the stuff up close. But just flipping through it, I mean, first of all, I hadn't seen these first two mini comics since they did that reissue back in 2001, I believe it was, with the original vintage figures. They reissued them for a little while, but not all of them, but just a bunch of them. Most of the first wave ones, and they were pretty much one-to-one, except for they came in this weird box that came on the outside. I thought was weird, but they're pretty much one-to-one, and they had the mini comics in it. So, and I hadn't seen, I probably talked about this in a couple of the other Masters Universes, but when that came out in 2001, I hadn't seen the cartoon, I hadn't seen the mini comics, and obviously I hadn't seen the vintage figures since the 80s, maybe towards the, I mean, I still kind of watched the cartoon even towards the end of the 80s, or whenever it went off the air, I mean, I think it was still on Channel 20 or Channel 50 here or down there in the Detroit area. I'm up here in the Bay City area, but it wasn't, they didn't, I think they kept it on until maybe 90, maybe into high school, I'm not sure. Let's just say hypothetically they did. 91 was the last time I had seen the cartoon. Well, I didn't see it again until 2001, which, looking back on it, that's only 10 years. I mean, we're talking about 2021. That's over 20 years ago from today. So it's just weird how time works. It's, like I said, it's getting spookier and spookier the older you get. But, so, again, I kind of, back in 2001, I kind of realized, oh, this is why, and I kind of said this in the late 80s-ish, kind of after I've been out of He-Man, because I still had the figures, and I still had the mini comics that I was saving. Again, I don't know where any of this stuff went. This is back when I lived at the trailer, so, I remember saying even back then, it's like, I like the Filmations cartoon, it's great, I love it. But I really like the mini comics, the story, the mythos in the mini comics, and I loved the art and all that stuff. Probably more so than the cartoon. And I still feel that way today for the most part. I mean, looking back on the Filmations, I got the two sets over there, and I've watched them a ton of times. I love them. They're two different moods. The comic book really, even though I had them in 1983, 1984, they really remind me of that 1982 period when they first came out at Ground Zero. 1983 to 1984 and into 85 really is what I remember of the cartoon. And like I said, there was a certain neighbor kid that was into it, and I really, whenever and those neighbor kids actually were going over to my grandmother's house, my mom's mom, because she was babysitting them every day after school, like in 83, 84, and I would normally just go to this was back when we lived downtown, that tiny little house apartment. I would just go home, for the most part, by myself, let myself in and watch cartoons there after school, but because there was somebody to play with and talk to, I would just walk down 2 doors down or 3 doors down to my grandmother's house and sit there and watch Thundercats, and no, Thundercats weren't out yet. What am I? Wait, okay, wait. I'm kind of. Let me backtrack. They were still neighbors of my dad, which was the family house on Winry and Avon Hill subdivision. I know 83 when the show came out, and even in 82 when the toys came out, I remember going to his house and watching the cartoon there in his basement, and then into 84. I know we moved out. My dad moved out, but the parents finally the divorce was final, and they took a long time. There was a lot of craziness going on back then, but it went on to. They ended up moving because remember I said the two houses burnt down on both sides, and they ended up moving. I want to say that was 85, actually, probably 85. And again, this is I kind of was out of He-Man at the time, in '85. So I think they had moved into Christian Hills, into the new subdivision, and the parents were still having them come over to my grandmother's house to be babysitted until they could pick them up around 5 o'clock. And I and that's when I was hanging out with them a lot. Then watching the show almost every single day. Because, like I said, I mean, I only went to my grandmother's on Thursday nights, but they were there every day after school, and so I think I just walked over there. If I didn't play with the neighbor kids that were there, I would walk over there and watch those shows, and that would make sense. And so if it was '85, I think Thundercats started in '85, didn't it? If I'm not mistaken. So that was new at the time, and we watched Thundercats. I still don't have a lot of recollection of maybe I just wasn't paying attention or what it was, but I don't have a huge memory of the Thundercats watching the show. Outside of those being at my grandmother's house, sitting on the floor on her old matted carpet, and watching that 19-inch television set in the corner of the living room, and eating fruit roll-ups. My grandma was stocked up on fruit roll-ups. That's what they liked, and so I ended up eating a lot of fruit roll-ups and watching a lot of He-Man then. But at '85, I was in 7th grade by now. So, and I know he was a year younger than me, so he was still in 6th grade. His sister was a few years younger than me, so she might even still been like 1st grade. But I think I was in 7th grade at the time. Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah, I was still in junior high at the time, so I was a little older. Again, I was out of the toys because of the whole She-Ra diabolical. I was on to other things, and I still listened to G.I. Joe, and I remember that because I would go over to his house. I remember trading him Alpine for Ripper, one of the Dreadnoks. So anyways, sorry, I can get into that story forever, but let's go back to this. And let me flip over to the, put this somewhere where you can see it. Not that it matters. But let's go back over to the PDF. Or it's not a PDF. Is it a PDF? No, it's a CBR. It's just scanned pages of the book is all it is. But they're pretty nicely scanned. So that's it. Again, this is put out by Dark Horse, 2015. I didn't know that until right now. 2015 Dark Horse put that up. Dark Horse is putting out a lot of these Masters of the Universe books. I've got most of them. I don't have the episode guide, a physical copy. I've got the CBR. I do have to do the newspaper strip book at some point. That's a cool book. And I didn't even know those existed until I got that book. And I picked that book up at a Motor City Comic Con, I think in 2017, for like $5, and it was like a $50 book. It was like $7, I think. But anyways, I got it like dirt cheap, and I was like, oh, I gotta have that. I read through those, and I was like, these are really neat. I gotta say they give the mini comics a run for their money, but I'll do a separate video on the newspaper strips. But like I said, they also Pixel Dan's book, the action figure book. I had that. That was gifted to me by the same person. And then I think that's all my He-Man books. Like I said, I don't have the episode guide, which I still need to get at some point. Oh, there's the Art of He-Man, which I have a CBR of it. That one's okay. I'm not a huge fan of it. But it'd be nice to have it, just to have all the books, in hardcover, and actual physical copies of them. But I'll keep an eye out for that one. But let's go into this book. So here's, of course, there's the cover. That is the... Another thing I find weird about this, that's the... I don't know why they use it. That's like the 2000X, or from like the newer toys logo. I mean, it's essentially the same as the original logo. It's newer. I wish they would have done the original on this. It would have just looked better. I mean, these are just little nitpicks I have about the book. But everything else is fine. They go pretty much in order. And there's a foreword written by Tim Kilpin. I think he was one of the writers or chief commercial officer. Okay. it goes into 1982. I think it even kind of talks about some of the same stuff. And this came out before that Toys That Made Us episode, but I think they talk about how that they couldn't do a cartoon because of the regulations at the time, which this was one of the shows that was why Reagan deregulated it. But they talked about doing the comic book, and I think that goes into the details on that. It's just a couple of paragraphs. Or maybe I'm just kind of flipping through it here. I don't think it talks about that. I think somewhere in the book they talk about that, but because I kind of knew about that before I saw the Toys They Made Of, and I must have read it somewhere. But this is essentially the first comic, free illustrated book with purchase, and copyright 1981. So this is before the even figures dropped. So this is when they put this together. This really isn't a comic book, and from the first series, they really didn't make comic book mini comics and comics until the second wave. After they had done the DC comic, I thought I had the DC CBR, the DC comic. I don't. There was like a mini series of DC comics that was put out right around this time, like between the 82, 83, and I might have been late 82, and it kind of expanded more on the universe. And so when they did the mini comics for the second and third wave, I think there were 7 of them, or 8 of them, or 13. I can't remember how many they were. But the mini comics, those were more in the vein of the DC comic, which was great. And the DC, I think there was a Superman and He-Man comic too, like crossover that they did around that time. But these first few comics, these weren't comics. I mean, these were essentially just illustrated books, almost like a storybook. They essentially that's what they were a storybook. So, and it like I said, and the origin of He-Man is totally different from the Filmation's cartoon. I like the origins of this one. He's a barbarian. He was just a barbarian from this barbarian tribe on Eternia, and then they kind of sent him out into the world, kind of like a Conan. I mean, maybe they wanted to change it because it was too much like Conan, because obviously He-Man, most of it was taken from Conan. But and he was the Cimmerian, kind of Conan the Barbarian, and he goes out into like the modern world and and visits all these new civilizations, and that's essentially what He-Man does in this. There was no Prince Adam at the time. There's no Orko. That was all made for the Filmation show. Most people probably know that if you're really into He-Man. But yeah, so it was just He-Man, and he leaves his people. I'm not going to summarize every issue, but I'm just going to go through the first few just to show you kind of how they presented this. And then he sees the sorceress, which that was the sorceress. I think they call her the Green Goddess. Motu. Here's the thing that's kind of odd with me. I like the mini comics better than the Filmation show. I guess I can honestly say that. However, Motu has a bunch of repaints in the Motu line, and my son has the Green Goddess, I'm pretty sure. And I know he has the Stratos. I don't think he's opened it because it was such a peg warmer. He just didn't want to open it. But the Naked Stratos. But he does have the Lords of Power Merman. But anyways, they did a reprint with the exception of Lords of Power Merman, and I think the Beast Man. Some of the other ones are just direct repaints from the regular Origins. I keep pointing over it because my case is right there. But yeah, he but for some reason I just don't want to buy the fake. I hate repaints for one thing, and I know that repaints make sense in this regard because they pertain to the comic, and I like the comic better. So you'd think, ergo, I would like these repaints. I just couldn't do it. It's like, I just don't want them. I don't want to buy the characters again just to get the mini comic versions. And I don't think they came out with a Barbarian He-Man for Origins. At least I don't think they did. But they did come out with one for the Revelation, the Masterverse version, which I didn't collect really. I started to, and then I stopped real quick. But yeah, so he ends up saving the sorceress, and of course, obviously as in the lore of this one is Teela, to his to basically get 2 figures out of 1. And this is ingenious. And I mean, this does seem like a very repainty move. But when they first did this, I thought it was brilliant. I mean, they took, the Teela, they put her in the snake armor, and then when you take off the snake armor, she's Teela, but you put on the snake armor, she's the sorceress, or and obviously in the Filmation show, the sorceress was a totally different character. Well, it's a totally different character here, but she was the mother of the sorcerer, or of Teela. Spoiler alert if you didn't know that. But anyways, the Green Goddess is a clone of, the Teela is a clone of the Green Goddess, of the sorceress, and that's how they kind of explain that away. And I thought that was cool. I just thought that was neat. And he ends up saving her from this crazy monster, and then she gifts him these these basically magical armor. This is 81, but this is 82 when I was reading this. This is very and this, like I said, at the time, this is about as much as I could read. I could read a storybook, I couldn't read much more than that. But this was, it was very, very much like Clash of the Titans, how when, Zeus gifts those golden weapons, those special weapons created by the gods to Perseus. It's the same shtick, she gifts him these, what do you call it? What's weird is I just noticed this in the very background. I don't think I looked at this closely before. That looks a lot like the Bashosaurus, but this is way before the Bashosaurus came out. I wonder if the Bashosaurus was an old design, and they didn't use it. But whoever did the artwork to this had seen the prototype, or seen the concept sketches, and came up with this, because this toy didn't exist at that time. Now, obviously, that's the front of the battle ram, the Sky Sled. But like I say, again, going back, she gives him these weapons, and then he realizes, oh, with these weapons, I am even stronger. So there was like power in his whatever they call that, a harness or chest piece. Let's call it a chest piece. And it made him stronger. And then and then there's Teela. We see Teela for the first time with her golden unicorn. And then Skeletor and Beastman are creeping on her. That's totally a creeper shot right there. So anyways, they're creeping on her. I don't know exactly what... Oh, he wants to make her his bride. Well, who wouldn't? Skeletor, who wouldn't? There's the original Beastman, which I like that Beastman a lot. And then they go after them. They end up overpowering her, and then they take her to Castle Grayskull. So the whole point of these comics, obviously, was to give some kind of backstory to the toys. So the toys weren't just... So there was, it gave it some weight, and it gave it something that kids would want. And it totally worked on me. I was... This hit... Like I said, this hit me. I was at Ground Zero at the perfect time. You couldn't even ask for a better time, because, like I said, but unless you discount my experiences, which they obviously didn't want you to do with the whole He-Man animated movie and She-Ra, but it also fits my age bracket. I mean, junior high, we weren't supposed to be playing with toys anymore, and and at the same time, it comes out they're going to make it for girls too, so. That fits perfect, In 82, I was 9, so it hit me right at the right time. So this stuff was like just tailor-made for me. I mean, everything that I loved at the time, this was the epitome. And I was thinking about yesterday, and I thought to myself, because I was looking at my Star Wars figures on the wall, I'm like, what is my quintessential toy line from the 80s? And I gotta say it's probably He-Man. I would like to be cool and say it was G.I. Joe, and I love G.I. Joe, but remember, I didn't get in on Ground Zero. I missed 82 because of He-Man, and even though I liked and collected G.I. Joe longer than He-Man, and I technically like the show a little bit better than the Filmation show, and I technically like the comic book of G.I. Joe better than the He-Man comic, mini comics. I gotta say, just overall, if you were to take metrics if you were to assign everything a value, do the calculus on it, this would still probably come out number one as my favorite toy of the toy line of the 80s. It just it appealed to something deeper inside of me that I was kind of feeling at the time, and felt ever since, that G.I. Joe didn't, and that Star Wars didn't. And then I'm not even getting into the Transformers, although I love the Transformers, but they're out of the big three, the Transformers were definitely my third favorite. But I say big four because I count Star Wars figures because of Jedi as in the big, I call it the big four. Yeah. So yeah, they take Teela back, and as you notice, Teela has long blonde hair too. She doesn't have the red hair yet. They just assume, the typical, American blonde, California girl would be the what they want, what people would want to see. And at the time, I think I did like blondes. I went through most of my late teen years and into my early adulthood. I always liked brunettes better. Now I kind of can go either way. I'm not really a blonde or a brunette guy. I can go either way. Right now I'm kind of like how it was back then. Yeah, so they take him inside Castle Grayskull, and I really loved the art. I mean, this is what stuff that really caught my eye as a kid, and as a soon to become artist. Or I mean, I kind of was an artist at the time, but I was just learning. But was just seeing like all these, and I didn't interpret these as paint marks with gouache or watercolor. I interpreted them as marker marks. And I just thought, oh, look, there's different colors of marker, and all these, you don't even have to ink the bricks. You can just kind of, and it fades off into this white of the page. I love that. I still love that. I love when they do that in comics, where you get panels, but one or two of the panels has no real background, and it just kind of takes the immediate foreground objects, like the figure and the whatever's immediately behind them, kind of fades it off into the white of the gutters. I love that. I mean, it's and you don't see that much anymore, but I mean, that's quintessential classic comic book, art, and I love that. And I try to mimic this too, because obviously as a kid, it's like you use up a lot of your markers trying to color a background like that. So I would color the character with my markers pretty heavily, and these comics really made me love markers. I would say this one, and again, 1982. That's when I learned how to draw anatomy. It was from looking at the action figures. Remember, this is 82. This is before I got into Marvel Comics. And I was like, oh, I don't want to color the whole background. I'm going to use all my marker up. So I would just basically do that. I would just do the immediate surroundings to kind of make him pop out of the background, and then it would just fade off into the page. And that's how I used to do that stuff back then. And I kind of still do that, but I do it digitally. And then they talk about the two halves of the power sword, and that's that I thought that was cool. I mean, it was a gimmick because of the toy, and they had the two different sides, but I loved that, and I thought that was really neat. And the thing is, with this, they're giving you just enough you need to know. They're not going super heavily into like this world building thing, and they're not overly explaining these characters, and that was perfect. And that's something that I think people have got. The adults like myself who've grown up with this comic, I think, have overdone it to death. They've overbaked the cookies. I don't want that much. They go into like talk about like how Skeletor became. I don't need to know all that stuff, and I don't care to know all that stuff. All I want to know is the basics. Hey, he's this guy. He's got a bone head. There's this Beast Man. He's half beast, half man. Beast Man. He's evil. There's a pretty girl who needs saving, and she's also a formidable warrior, but obviously gets overpowered by multiple adversaries. Plus, she got they kind of snuck up on her too. And again, she wasn't the super strong warrior. I mean, she was in this because she does lay down a lot, as the comics go on. but Filmation's really painted her as like this really, strong and stern and kind of bitchy woman, which I like that aspect of her. Just she's got spunk, and I like that of her. But at the same time, this is more simplistic, and in that regards, I prefer the Teela from Filmation's better. I love the voice. Like I said, there's this weird thing where she kind of had the same hairstyle as my 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Warlock. Mrs. Warlock was old-ish back then, and it's just like, I don't know. I hope that there wasn't some strange attraction to Mrs. Warlock when I was in 5th grade, but pretty sure there wasn't. But I don't know. Just kind of a weird coincidence that her and because she had like this kind of beehivey red hair that was always done up, just like Teela was, and so. Like I said, if there was, I'm suppressing it as far down as possible. I refuse to believe that I was attracted to Mrs. Warlock. I mean, she was older than my dad at the time. Sorry. I know there's some dudes that like old chicks, but this is not one of them. Anyways, so then Ram Man's, look at that drawing. Now that is a drawing, all right. But anyways, so Ram Man shows up. He's got the battle ram. Sort of. I guess that other vehicle was supposed to be the battle ram, because that's kind of, now I look at it, that's kind of what that was supposed to be. And he's, oh my gosh, I mean, it looks great. I love the artwork, but man, if you look at the proportions and stuff on that stuff nowadays, you're like, whoa, that was rough. But again, I love the coloring. I mean, everything looks like the toy. For the most part. I know the Naked Stratos, I know Merman look different, but, and Teela looks different. But, I mean, overall, the coloring in this, which, I'm pretty sure this is gouache, maybe watercolor. I'm pretty sure it's not marker. It could just be mixed media. I mean, he could have been using, I think it's all gouache, though, pretty sure. Just inks and gouache. I would love to see these inked, like, if somebody made Xeroxes of these, or photostats, as they were called back then. This stuff before it was color. That would have been really neat to see. Then they start going with the Ghost of Grayskull. And they did not do any of this really in the Filmation show. I just thought that white-yellow bat on his thing was very Batman. I love the way they color Grayskull. I showed you. I'm pretty sure I showed you the paper ones that I made, the paper craft ones that I made. But I love how that's that yellow goes into that chartreuse and then kind of greenish and then kind of fades into that true blue. I love that look. Again, these are things that don't exist anymore, and as nice as the new artwork is for the Origins and stuff like that, I think this stuff to younger people, or young people who are kind of in between like me and like younger people, millennials essentially, I think that they consider this artwork and they consider this stuff antiquated and primitive. I don't think they have the appreciation for it as somebody like I have, and I know there are other people who have appreciation as well, but I have a very fond appreciation for this artwork and classic comic book artwork. And I think that the millennials, because they're kind of the next generation and they grew up on a lot of 90s stuff, and their 80s were the 90s, and their 90s were stuff like all the Image comics and the X-Men cartoon and Pokemon and Sailor Moon and all that 90s, Power Rangers. I think that those people, when they look at the stuff from the 80s, it's the same way I kind of looked at stuff from like the Silver Age when I was in the 80s. I was like, oh, it looks primitive. I don't know if I like it. It doesn't look as good as the Bronze Age stuff, which is 70s, 80s. And this is so close to the 70s, you could almost put this in the 70s bracket. But I think it's just, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of my generation who is like, we're obviously fans and you see people online, but every time I see toy people online, they're always about 8 years younger than me, 5 or 8 years younger than me. I would say late Gen X or early millennials. Whenever I see people who it's like, oh, they worked on this and they grew up with this, they're talking about like, oh, I was 12 years old in 1990. It's like, oh, or 91, they're 12. So that's when I graduated high school. So I'm obviously, it just seems like all the people online are the people I see that are into this stuff now, they all seem to be just a little bit younger than me. And maybe, you know, like I said, maybe that's why I got out of it in '84. I was a little too old for it, but, you know, like I said, I mean, my 5 and as we were talking about the other video I just made, you know, my 6 years old, I was in, you know, I was into Kiss, you know. And then, yeah, obviously in 7, I was into Dungeons and Dragons, this is, you know, this kind of feeds all into that. Again, I like when they don't put the background in there. Like I said, this is an illustrated book. You know, they go to attack. They're going basically after Teela to get her back, so they're going to attack Grayskull. Because what do you do with the figures? I mean, you only got a handful of guys. Let's say you have everything from issue 1. Or let's say you don't even have everything issue 1. Wave 1, you've just got Ram Man, He-Man, you've got Teela, you've got Beastman, you've got Skeletor, you've got the Battle Ram, and you've got the Castle Grayskull. I mean, you don't even have Battle Cat yet. So if you have those things, I mean, what are you going to do? Well, Beastman and Skeletor are going to kidnap Teela, and they're gonna hide her in the in Castle Grayskull, and then Ram Man and Ram Man. I keep calling Ram Man Man at Arms. Man at Arms and He-Man are going to go save her and attack the castle. I mean, I like simple stuff like that. I don't need over explanation. You know, I'm thinking about it how I was at 9 years old. I'm just gonna, you know, bad guys, pretty girl captured. You know, talking about barbarians. I was a barbarian kid. You know, must save pretty girl. Bad guys got her in evil castle. Gotta go attack evil castle. Save pretty girl. That's all I need. It's all I need. The only story I need. Again, you know, there's, you know, in just like a Conan, it's like, sorcery. I'm scared of it. You know, don't trust this sorcery. It's evil. You know, and then here's, you know, then the sorceress shows up, you know, the green goddess, and does she split the sword in half? He has the power sword, okay, because, yeah, he needed it to get in the castle. And then, so He-Man doesn't have it. He still has his axe at this point, and then she splits it in half, and then, you know, there's the cover, pretty classic image, and then they run off into the moonlight. You know, and the good guys are here. I mean, I love with the moon and the rim lighting and stuff that's on all these characters to give it that moon. I just love that art. God, I love that art. So simplistic though, too. And then of course there's the you know, like I said, it comes with that special set. You get the Ghost of Grayskull. You know, and that was it. I mean, and they go into, you know, they talk about some of these other stuff. They have these like little interviews and stuff in between, but until you got some more guys or you got Battle Cat, I mean, here's, you know, that storyline. I don't know how many times I replayed out the storyline in there with my figures. Although I did have, because like I said, I had my first figure Skeletor, second figure was Zodak, third figure was He-Man, but then I got He-Man right around the same time as I got Beastman and Teela, and I had the Wind Raider. Did I have the Wind Raider before the Battle Ram? I think I did. So, you know, I followed the comic, but not exactly. But by the time the end of the year, by, you know, what do you call it? Christmas, when I had everything, yeah, I was going through the comics and redoing the storylines in the comics with the figures. And like I said, it was even simpler than a cartoon, because the cartoon is more explanation, even though that was pretty simplistic, right? But like I said, I liked the bare bones comic idea. And then of course, you know, when I'm done playing with the toys, because, you know, I wanted to become an artist, or, you know, I was gravitated towards quite heavily, I just grabbed the paper, grabbed the markers and the pens and the pencils, and I just started drawing the characters, you know, out of this mini comic. I would draw them, you know, I'd take the figure in hand and take a pencil, and I'd try to copy down and try to, you know, visually map the whole figure and muscles. Like, what are these things on the side? Oh, ribs on the side? Oh, you know, what are these muscles here? You know, the six-pack muscles, the pecs, the biceps, you know, the shoulders. shoulder muscles, the forearms, the calves, and then this is also kind of where I started to develop my love of the female form, was because of I would say probably Tila and Evelyn were probably my biggest, because I was, like I said, I was starting to edge into puberty here. Obviously by comic book time I was full blown, liked all the girls. Once I actually went through puberty, but at the time, like I said, the stuff was all coming into my head. My son's right around that age too, so he's kind of, I don't know exactly how. Hopefully he's not on the bad channels constantly on his phone or tablet, which I don't think he is. I know he calls the stuff, whenever he sees the stuff or he was aware of the stuff's there, he calls it sussy. Oh, the sussy stuff. So I'm pretty sure he's not getting into it yet, but he probably will. I'd say give him another year, and yeah, he's gonna be clearing out his internet history quite often, so his mom doesn't catch him. I don't go through his internet history. I just trust the kid. I just, if I immediately see him on stuff that he shouldn't be on, I give him a talk, and I was like, hey, you shouldn't be on that yet. You're not really into that stuff yet, so we gotta wait. I was so into that stuff at his age, and I've learned about this way too early, so thanks to my dad. Like I said, my dad was a character. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to the second issue. So there we go. Now we get Battle Cat, right? I always loved that cover. I've drawn that cover tons of times. So now we got Battle Cat. I remember I got Battle Cat from Kittyland. I think it was just one of those trips to Chatham grocery store. And I walked down to Kittyland, and came back to Chatham's. My dad was finishing up the groceries. I go, Dad, I want to get, can I get something from He-Man? What is it? Can I get the Battle Cat? How much is it? It was like $6, $7 at the time. My dad's like, fine. So we went down and got the Battle Cat. That was one of those trips. I think I know Wind Raider I got after we ate at the Western Stockade, which was the restaurant there, and it was the Old Port for the longest time. I called it the Old Port because it's all it went there was old people with their senior citizens discount. The Old Port was for old people, and it was like that for the longest time until it switched over to I think it's a coffee shop now. I know it was a Caribou coffee shop for a while, if it's still even there. But I would say like 81 to like 85, 84, 85, it was called the Western Stockade, and it was basically like a Ponderosa. They had like sorry, I get way too into detail. But my dad would take us there at least once a week, or take me there once a week, and get T-bone steaks, because they weren't that expensive. I'd hate to see that stuff is outrageously priced now because of the inflation, but especially meat. But yeah, you get these T-bone steaks with steak fries, throw some A1 on there, drink about 6 or 7 refill, because they had refills there too, of Sprite, and then have to pee, and then eat all the chocolate mousse from the dessert bar, and then after you've gorged yourself on hedonistic pleasure there, we would walk, a couple doors down past Rochester Book Center and go to Kittyland, and I remember one of the evenings, this is when I got, I got Wind Raider first, then I went to my friend's house, and he had Tila, and he wanted my Wind Raider, and I remember, I've told the story before, probably on camera, but we were in his driveway, evening, it's like getting time, Tim, maybe you should get going home, it's getting dark, and we're sitting in his dad was, he was just finishing up, cleaning up, he had a classic Mustang, and he was cleaning it up, and he said, and then, the friend was he's like, Dad, he goes, I really want this Wind Raider, and he goes, would you rather have Wind Raider more or Tila more? And he goes, I want Wind Raider more. I don't know why he asked him that. Was he going to take Tila back or something? I thought that was weird, because he still had his Tila. But then I wanted Tila, even though I had the Wind Raider. It was kind of weird. We should have just traded, but I remember getting Tila, and then very shortly after that, it might have been one of those grocery store trips. It could be a Western Stockade trip. I miss those days. And then, so then there's this mystery figure here. I remember they kind of explain it sort of in here. And I always thought that was cool. And then you can see now they're starting to do Teela with the reddish hair. There's Naked Stratos. This is when they first introduced Stratos. He's naked Stratos, so it's just his skin colors. He doesn't have the gray like the action figure, which I thought was weird too. Even as a kid, I was like, what? Why is he not gray? And then Merman shows up. And I gotta say, when I was a kid in that first wave of He-Man guys, I was so much more a Merman fan than I was a Beastman fan. I thought Merman was cool. I thought he was so neat looking. When the cartoon came out and he had the, oh, here you are, I really didn't like that. And they made him more like I said, they made all the bad guys buffoons in the cartoon. They weren't buffoons in this. They were kind of, dunderheads, but they really, he just zapped, He-Man, although he doesn't have his magic chest plate on, his magic chest piece on, but, he zaps him there, and of course that's the Lords of Power Merman. My son's got the action figure of that, but the coloring's off. I'm surprised they didn't do a repaint of that and make it more of an aqua green, aqua blue than just do the straight up green. But I love Merman. I thought, he hands down, I would think Merman and Stratos were both my two favorite figures of that first wave, and obviously they both featured in this comic too. That's right, he gets the sword, opens up the drawbridge. Teela's in there again. I think she's guarding the castle. I can't remember what it was. There we go. Use of the trap door. It's the gimmick that was in the Grayskull that was never got old, throwing people through the trap door. And then, so yeah, pretty much this comic kind of fleshes out the rest of the line. I don't think they do the Wind Raider yet. I think that's another issue. But there's a nice big fight. I love that color. I love the sky with all the different colored dots for like different colored planets and stars, and then all that lighting on the castle. God, it's gorgeous. Love it. I love all that art. And the way they did the hot spots on Skeletor, I just love all that art. God, sorry. Over here art-gasming out, but I can't help it. I just love that stuff so much. Again, the sword split again. There's the ghost of Grayskull. They ride off on Battle Cat. Okay, Wind Raider, yeah. So let's see, we're at 47 minutes, so I'm going to kind of speed it up a little bit here. Let's at least get through the first, and then I'll talk about the other ones really fast. This almost needs to be a second. I can get so into this stuff. This almost needs a second episode. If I do 2 episodes in a row of this, it might lose some people. So, like I said, my videos are all over the place, and I don't really apologize for that. I'm trying to cover what I love, and at the same time trying to find a good foothold on what'll bring this channel up. Obviously, I just looked at my KISS numbers and the KISS video. People love KISS. Obviously, there's a huge KISS following, but I didn't think the KISS video was going to take off as much as it did. Okay, now we get Gray Stratos. Now everything seems to be set in motion. And Merman is more green. He's still that Lords of Power green, but he is green. Looks like they just forgot the color. Or the Skeletor there. But, now we get more of a fight and kind of a throwdown with all the characters. Then they show the separation of the Sky Sled from the Battle Ram. This looks so cool with the wind blowing the trees like that. That's so neat. In the sky like that. God, that's so cool. There we go. More what do you call it? More BDSM with Teela. She seems to be tied up all the time. What are you going to do? You got to kidnap the girl, and you got to tie her to something, or tie her up so she doesn't get away. I'm sure this is what do you call it? Where a lot of fetishes started for kids. Like Wonder Woman. The old BDSM imagery in Wonder Woman. I guess hasn't been lost on the first He-Man stuff. Even in the Filmation cartoon, she's chained up every 5 minutes or something. Not saying I don't like that. I'm just pointing it out. So anyways, he's gonna crush him with a rock. He takes off his chest piece. Yada yada yada. Calls the Battle Cat. Battle Cat comes. Hey, and this is kind of neat. I don't know if they like in the one thing I thought was cool in the Revelations. Even though I really wasn't a huge fan of that show, the Kevin Smith thing. I think didn't Merman like leave because he's like cast out of the castle, and he went to like this old like stone cabin out in the woods. And that's kind of the showing him here. I always thought that was cool. He's just kind of this mad tinkerer, I'm assuming this is before we even have, like I said, there's no Eterno, there's no Eternos, there's no, Marlena and King Randor. This is way back before then. And again, I like that. I like simple. Look at the way the clouds are done. Obviously they just inked this, and it looks like maybe they left a white spot open on the inks here, and then went in and painted this sky, or that it could even be charcoal or colored chalk. It could be. I'm not sure, pastel chalk, but that just looks amazing. It's probably gouache and watercolor. More usually the gouache they would use more for illustrations than watercolor. Watercolor is kind of hard to use unless you really dilute it, and then like this background could be watercolor. It almost looks like I can see the watercolor paper, and I think I don't know. It's hard to tell. He could have cut this out and threw this over some watercolor paper. It's hard to tell. Again, kind of repeats that motif here. I gotta use that. I gotta use this in some of my art. Great drawing of. That's an awesome drawing of Battle Cat there. And then this almost very like this heavy black contrast of them in the background there. That looks awesome. He's going to shoot himself in the foot. I said he's kind of a dolt, but he's not as dunderheady as they do in the cartoon. This crazy mad vertical climb in the Wind Raider. That's right, because the bad guys have sky sleds too. Rock'em sock'em, bam, poof, pow, bing bang boom, and suddenly we're off. And I believe there's 4 comics for the original figures, and I think this is the 4th one here. So I'm going to cover this one, and I'm just going to scan through the other ones real quick. Again, I might come back to this and talk about those specifically. The actual mini comics. This is more mini storybooks is what these are. But again, look at that, the way that color. I just love that color. Also, here's the thing I try to do with my art, and I probably talked about this before, is I always go for a limited palette. I like a limited palette. I think an unlimited palette, you just get bogged down, and things just become, they don't have a certain quality to them, and I kind of like my artwork to kind of be closer to classic art, classic comic art, or classic illustration than more modern stuff. So I try to eliminate just going bananas with the color palette. I limit myself to whatever my colors are, 68 colors, and I try to stay there. Sometimes I might, increase or decrease the value of them a little bit, the light and darkness of it, just because it's a little off. Or maybe I'll even eye drop on something and I'm trying to copy, and get close to. But other than that, I try to use my same limited palette, just because I think it keeps everything looking the same and uniform. I like that a lot. Nice drawing here. Like I said, nice use of just this kind of weird psychedelic backgrounds, which is very Bronze Age comic-y. And then, fade that off into not even fade, just kind of cut that right off into a white background like that. Great that's a great drawing. I mean, obviously it's supposed to be like an ape swinging through the forest. And that was probably drawn with photo reference of a chimpanzee or something, or a gorilla. Probably a chimpanzee swinging. Somebody could even taken a shot at a zoo. But that just looks amazing. And then the alien, it's the very colorful alien world that Eternia is. I just love that. Again, I love all the mountains in the background. And he's got another henchman now. I'm surprised they never made the gold horse. I mean, essentially, Stridor is the mechanical horse, and he's kind of gold-ish. But I'm surprised they never made this horse. Obviously, they had nothing to. They didn't have a big gym, toy that they could just repaint. So they would have had to, design this up from scratch, which I don't think they were wanting to do at the time. But I'm surprised. Classics must have gone back and done it, but Golden Horse would have been pretty cool back then. If it comes out now, it's just like the repaints for the mini comic stuff. Do I really want it? I mean, if they came out with this thing, it's crazy looking, like whatever this is supposed to be. Stratos is back to naked Stratos again. I find that weird. Sorry, I'm already yawning. So that pretty much wraps up so just a lot of fighting, blah, 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 a lot of blasting, blah, blah, blah. She's back to blonde here, too. It's weird. This art must have been done before. So now we're going to get into and that's an interview with the artist here, Marks Texeira, or how do you say his name? So, again, DC does, I think it's 2 issues. I think it's only 2 issues, a limited series. Maybe it's 3 issues of the He-Man comic. Or maybe it's 2 double size, I'm not sure. But great art. And I think this Mark guy does the artwork to it, I'm pretty sure. And then they use that as a model, and then when they do the second wave in '83, they go for more of a comic book feel to introduce new characters. And of course the first one was Ram Man. Again, I think with the time that's permitted here, I think I'm just going to scan through them real quick, show you the covers. But as far as my stories, because I don't even know if I covered my story on Ram Man yet, getting Ram Man. And then there's the attack track. And as you remember, my anger about the whole new Mattel, or whatever that is, Eternia's Choice or whatever thing, and wanting to, I want this, I don't want this, and I want this. I mean, not this orange version. I want the one that I had. And I don't care if it's not powered or not. I just want that to finish off my collection. And there's another shot of it. So anyway, so this comic was the Ram Man comic. Here's some kind of weird. I think it's strange too. Like I said, I'll get into this more in detail later. And then there's the Manny Faces. Manny Faces was my first figure of the second series. I didn't know that the second series was out until I went to Kittyland one Saturday with my dad, to get groceries, and I saw that, and I was like, what is this? And then there's a story behind that. I've drawn Teela pretty nice there. And then they go into, and then of course you get the Triclops issue, and then we get the, I really like the Trapjaw issue. Trapjaw was my favorite character of that second series. He might even still be one of my favorite characters of all time. But here's the thing, it's weird. So they give you 4 comics, just like the last 4 comics, but now what about Evil-Lyn? Evil-Lyn, even if they didn't give her a dedicated comic, she came out in the second wave. They didn't give us an Evil-Lyn comic. I still want an Evil-Lyn comic. I love Evil-Lyn. And I think I like Evil-Lyn better than Teela, so I want my Evil-Lyn mini comic from back in the day. I guess I'll just make it myself. And then we're going to get into the third ones. Like I said, these are the ones I'm going to cover in detail later, but we get into the third ones. Man, they're really drawing her up there. And I don't even see any of the new characters, so maybe this is a bleed over. Oh no, here we go. No, that's from the second series. Yeah, we get the birds, and there's an attack track again, and then we get the point is way up there, the Eagle Talon, or Talon Fighter. Call it Eagle Talon, sorry. Eagle Talon was our maneuvers ground when I was in the Army at Fort Benning, Georgia, so I always say, whenever I see that, I always call it Eagle Talon. It's not Eagle Talon, it's the Talon Fighter. So prominent in these comics too. That giant would have been cool. I know they made a giant, whatever, but that giant would have been cool. They made him. Yeah, I'm not seeing. Okay, and then they go into these, and I'm not going to get into these because I never had these as a kid. But and then it starts, and then that's when the art. There's Evelyn, and that's when the artwork started to get a little wonky, as you can see. But if I do a second issue or a second episode of this to cover the later ones, I'll get into those in more detail. But for now, yeah, Buzz Up. So this is most of the, yeah, and there's Snake Mountain. And there's Snake Mountain, so. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get all my figures out and reread all these and sit there and play with my toys again and reenact the scenes from the comic book at some point. And now they finally got Attack Jack the right colors. So yeah, sorry I'm flipping through everything so fast, but it's been an hour, so it's a good time to call this one. So yeah, again, if you can pick this up, I highly recommend it. I mean, you know, all the new Origin figures do come with mini comics, and I guess I need to do a video on that sometimes later. But I think I'll wait until around Christmas time when that book, there's another book that I have pre-ordered that covers all the Origins art. And again, you know, I don't dislike the Origins art. I like the older art better, but I'll get into you know, my analysis. I'll probably do a video on that book alone, and then I'll talk about the mini comics, and I'll kind of finish out talking about most of Origins, because hopefully it's all out by then. Like I said, I don't think anything else is going to come out this year as far as the toys that I want. I don't think there's going to be this Battle Ram. If anything, next year we might see a couple of those. If not, I think it's never going to happen. So I've got pretty much all the ones I want for now, and I'm happy with those. And I'm happy with this, not even having the originals. So yeah, if you can get this, get it. I don't know how much it was. Like I said, I didn't purchase it, but usually the prices on it. $30. Well, it's $30 in 2015, so I'm assuming it's probably right around the same price. And probably still on Amazon, I don't know. Or maybe you can get it on Thrift Books. Thrift Books would have this stuff. Like I said, I still need to get a couple of the other books I'm missing, too, to complete the whole collection. But great book, great comics. Like I said, I think to me, it's the heart of, outside of the toys, it's the heart of the brand, I think, is the mini comics. And I feel that way over the Filmations cartoon, although the Filmations cartoon is definitely part of the family. So, yeah. And this stuff I'll probably cherish forever. I'll probably never get rid of this stuff. Not this time, not again. I'm not going through this again, you know. Like I said, I'm 50 years old. You know, as long as I stay relatively healthy, I should have at least 30 years left on this planet. So, you know, in the 30 years left on this planet, I'm just going to keep this stuff till the end. You know, never get rid of it. So, and maybe, yeah, I guess it would take another 30 years for them to come out with reissues of the Origin stuff. But I think my time will be done by that time. But, yeah. So, sorry, now I get dark here at the end of this episode, but I think I covered that pretty well. Like I said, I'll probably do a follow-up just from some of those other ones, and I'll see how the video does, too. If it's down there with Dark Tower video, I don't know, maybe nobody cares about this stuff. So, again, I'm trying to see what people are responding to the most. And it's not like I want to follow whatever is popular, but just starting out, I need to blow up here. I need to, you know, get this, at least get this channel monetized. So I'm gonna have to follow whatever is popular until I make that happen. Maybe after everything's, you know, catches on and I get more of a following, then I can be more self-indulgent and get into the stuff that I truly love that nobody else seems to care about. But we'll worry about that then. Other than that, like I said, this whole video will pop up on Monday morning, and then hopefully Monday I'll record that new Ghost video for the new album. Well, the first album, but the newest album I'm acquiring. And I'll have the t-shirt too, so it can be cool. Alright, until then, catch you later, and guys, have a good weekend. I probably said this before, but I'm saying it again. Have a good weekend. Alright, talk to you then. Bye-bye.